Have you ever felt that you have been standing for a very long time at the threshold of a new version of yourself, yet somehow still haven't stepped through it? Not because you lack determination, goals, or opportunities, but deep inside, there are tiny, silent things pulling you back. An unconscious habit, a repeated reaction, a relationship you keep simply because it's familiar, or a fear that has lived in you for years but has never been named. Carl Jung once pointed out that people do not change when they try really hard, but when they recognize the hidden movements operating their lives from behind the curtain of consciousness. And the turning point of 2026 does not lie in the dramatic goals you declare, but in the 10 silent shifts gradually forming within you. Changes so small that only those who are awake enough can notice them. In today's video, you will step into a journey of 10 small changes with the power to restructure your entire inner world. Changes no one can see, yet they determine who you will become in the new chapter of your life. If you feel your soul whispering that it's time to change, stay until the end, because perhaps this is the invitation that 2026 is sending to you. Number 1. Realizing the old version of yourself. Realizing the old version of yourself no longer fits, perhaps real change doesn't begin with a loud thunderbolt, but with a very quiet moment. One morning, you wake up, look into the mirror, and realize something in your eyes has changed. No longer excited by the things that once made your heart race, no longer wanting to repeat the life that seemed fine. You are not exactly sad, you just feel that some layer of yourself has become old, too tight, and you cannot continue wearing it for even one more day. Carl Jung called this the moment when the persona, the social role you carry, begins to crack. And through that crack, the light of truth begins to enter. Most of us are taught that change must begin with action, learning new skills, changing jobs, changing environments. But Jung looked deeper. He believed that true transformation only begins when you dare to admit the version you are living is no longer suitable. You don't need to do anything immediately, you just need to be honest with yourself. I cannot continue being the person of last year anymore. That small sentence is the soul's first detonation. It is not loud, but powerful enough to collapse what is no longer real. I once heard the story of a woman who stayed in the same job for 10 years just because it was stable. Every morning she woke up, made coffee, put on the same familiar shirt, drove the same road, repeating everything to the point that even the voice in her head became boring. One day she sat in her car, watched people walk by, and asked herself, "Am I living or just maintaining?" The question didn't give her an answer, but it shook her entire inner world. A week later, she submitted her resignation, not because she hated the company, but because she knew the old self had expired. She didn't know what was coming, but she knew what could not continue. And sometimes that is the beginning of all transformation. Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." This pain is not punishment, but the natural stretching that occurs when the soul has outgrown its old container. When you realize you no longer fit something, a job, a relationship, a role, do not rush to conclude that you are unstable. Understand that this is your soul reclaiming its space. The truth is, nothing new can enter your life if you are still clinging tightly to what is old. Like a room that has become too cramped, you don't need to break down the walls, you just need to acknowledge that you are suffocating in it. From that awareness, the next steps will naturally appear. Change doesn't begin with a plan, it begins with honesty. And if today you feel you no longer fit your old life, don't be afraid. This is not a sign of being lost, but a sign of evolution. Allow your soul to expand just a little more. Let 2026 begin with a small but powerful whisper, "I have changed." Because the moment you realize the old version no longer fits, you have already completed half of the journey of transformation. Number 2,
withdrawing energy from what the unconscious has already rejected. Once you recognize that your old version no longer fits, another movement silently begins. Your energy starts withdrawing from the things your soul has already rejected. It happens quietly, without any declaration, but you will feel it clearly. What once excited you now feels heavy. Conversations that once made you feel belonging now sound like noise. Carl Jung believed that when a path is no longer meant for you, energy is the first thing to leave. And in 2026, true change lies not in trying harder, but in knowing when to stop pouring energy into what your soul no longer cares about. There is something strange. We often think exhaustion comes from working too much, but most of our depletion comes from trying to maintain things that have already died inside us, like watering a fake flower, effortful yet pointless.
You still do it because it's familiar, because you fear emptiness, because you think that if you stop, you will lose something important. But the soul cannot be deceived. When energy begins to withdraw, you find yourself losing patience with things that once felt fine, resenting habits once praised as good, even feeling distant from environments that once made you feel safe. This is not a sign of instability, but of growth. Because Jung wrote, "There is no energy without opposites. Without tension, there is no movement, no life." I once heard the story of Maya, who had a best friend for more than 10 years. They used to share everything, sleepless nights and great dreams. But over time, each meeting left Mia more drained than happy. Her friend began to complain, compare, and turn every conversation into a place to unload negativity. At first, Maya tried to listen, believing that was true friendship. But she soon realized she had to mentally prepare before seeing her friend. And after each conversation, she needed hours to recover. She didn't argue, didn't cut ties dramatically. She simply became quieter, responded less, letting distance form naturally. And when she stopped trying to hold on, she felt lighter, not because she lost a friend, but because she reclaimed her energy. Jung called this phenomenon withdrawing libido from old objects. When psychological energy naturally pulls away from what has lost meaning to prepare for a new form of life. You may find yourself no longer wanting to talk to someone who was once close, no longer interested in a job you once loved. Do not force yourself to be like before. Trust that energy knows its path. It is withdrawing from what no longer fits so it can return to your true center. And only when this energy is reclaimed can you invest in what is waiting ahead. So, in 2026, observe where in your life you feel drained. It may be a job, a relationship, or an old habit. Let the energy withdraw naturally. When the soul pulls away from one place, it means it is preparing to open another. And if you feel you no longer have energy for something, don't be afraid. It is a signal that an old chapter is closing and a new one is being written in silence. If this part touched you in any way, I invite you to share in the comments. What in your life has your energy quietly withdrawn from? You may share a short story, a moment, or simply a key word. It's not for others to understand you, but for you to recognize what your soul has known for a long time. Because sometimes, just speaking one small truth is enough to affirm to your soul, I am ready to step out of what no longer belongs to me. Number 3, shifting from reacting to observing. From unconscious to conscious. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And perhaps nothing describes your 2025 more accurately. A year in which most of the pain came not from others hurting you, but from unconscious reactions that repeated for far too long. The transformation of 2026 begins when you pause for just 3 to 5 seconds before reacting. A very small pause, yet it is the boundary between unconsciousness and awareness, between repetition and awakening. Have you ever noticed that most of the words you regretted, the wrong decisions you made, or the arguments that should never have happened, all came from moments when you reacted instead of observing?
Like when someone says something that hurts you and you immediately feel the urge to strike back to protect yourself. But if you stay silent for just 3 seconds, you will see clearly that person is not attacking you. They are speaking from their own fear. That tiny pause is the door to consciousness. A friend of mine, Daniel, was known for his quick temper at work. If someone made even a small mistake, he would immediately react, raise his voice, and then regret it afterward. One day, his therapist asked him to try something simple. Before reacting, pause for 3 seconds. At first, he dismissed the idea, but during a meeting, when anger rose, he tried it, just 3 seconds. And in that moment, he suddenly realized he wasn't actually angry at the employee. He was repeating the reaction of the child he once was, the boy who had been yelled at by his teacher. With just this habit of pausing, his life softened. His relationships became easier. He didn't change the world, he changed the way he responded to it. You see, the moment you pause before reacting is the moment you see clearly the true motive behind the emotion, what belongs to the present, what comes from old memories, and what is the fear you haven't faced. This clarity allows you to act from awareness instead of being controlled by the past. This reminds me of the story of Jesus when he was insulted and stoned. He did not react. He simply bent down and wrote in the sand. That action was not weakness. It was the symbol of someone who lives from consciousness, someone who refuses to be dragged down by the darkness of others. He responded with silence.
And that silence dispersed the crowd. In the same way, when you choose observation over reaction, you are no longer being led by the unconscious. You are leading it. The shift of 2026 does not require you to act more. It requires you to be more present. Whenever someone hurts you, whenever a memory resurfaces, whenever you are about to say something just to be right, pause for 3 seconds. Because in those 3 seconds, you cross from reflex to awakening, from the past to the present, from the old self to the evolving one. And when you learn to observe yourself, you will realize the world is not as chaotic as you think. It only mirrors the state of your mind. Removing one source of fake dopamine that pulls you away from your true self. Number 4, removing one source of fake dopamine that pulls you away from your true self. And from the moment you begin observing instead of reacting, another layer of awareness emerges. A realization that much of your disorientation doesn't come from wrong decisions, but from streams of fake dopamine quietly pulling you away from your true essence. This is the next silent change of 2026, reducing one fast stimulating source so your nervous system can regain the stillness your soul has lost for too long. Fake dopamine is anything that gives you quick excitement but leaves emptiness afterward. Mindless scrolling, consuming sensational news, shopping to soothe loneliness, immersing in drama, seeking instant validation, constant self-comparison, or engaging in hollow conversations just to fill space. These things are not inherently wrong, but they trade depth for stimulation, making your mind so noisy that you can no longer hear the voice of intuition. Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." But when fake dopamine consumes all your mental space, the heart becomes silent. You can no longer hear what you want. You simply chase the next hit of stimulation, like a compass interfered with by magnetic noise. Therefore, true transformation in 2026 doesn't come from adding a new habit. It comes from quietly removing what drains you most. I once met a man who always said he had lost the inspiration to live. He thought he needed a big goal, a new environment, or a long vacation. But when he examined his daily life, he realized he was living on countless forms of fake dopamine, checking email 50 times a day, reading news that had nothing to do with his life, joining 3 group chats just to avoid feeling left out, and watching drama every night to forget his exhaustion. When he decided to cut just one thing, turning off all notifications during work hours, he described his feeling after 3 days as like getting my brain back. Clarity didn't come from effort, it came from reducing noise. Neuroscience calls this the dopamine adaptation phenomenon.
When exposed to too many fast stimuli, dopamine receptors become desensitized, requiring more stimulation just to feel normal. As a result, real life feels dull. It becomes harder to focus, harder to feel joy, harder to be present. And that's when people seek more stimulation. Not because they enjoy it, but because their nervous system has drifted away from balance. That's why removing just one source of fake dopamine can shift your entire energy field. Your heartbeat slows, your mind clears, intuition returns, presence opens. You begin living deeper instead of faster, and the path of your soul becomes easier to sense. Jung called this purifying the energy field, not through effort, but through reduction. Less noise, less stimulation, less chasing what doesn't nourish the soul. And once even one thing is put down, the nervous system recalibrates to bring you back to yourself. Because 2026 does not require you to become stronger. It only requires you to become less dependent on what pulls you away from your true essence. If you believe 2026 will be a year when many people need to learn to slow down, reduce at least one source of stimulation, and return to themselves, please like this video to spread that message. Every like is not only support for the channel, but also a gentle affirmation that in a noisy world, awareness can begin from a very small shift, and you are part of that shift. Number 5. Learning to listen to your body as the first channel of the unconscious. As soon as you reclaim your energy from fake dopamine, other subtle signals begin to appear. And Jung will show you that they do not lie in your thoughts, they lie in your body, where the unconscious sends its first warnings. Carl Jung once wrote, "The psyche and the body are not separate entities, but one and the same life." This means the body is not merely a container for emotions, it is the most honest map of your soul. Long before you recognize you're on the wrong path, long before you admit something no longer fits, the body has been speaking loudly through irregular heartbeats, tightening shoulders, morning heaviness in the chest, unexplained fatigue or exhaustion after interactions that seemed minor. The problem is we've become so used to dismissing these signals as just a bit tired, normal stress, or just lack of sleep. But the body never lies. If the mind hides the truth, the body will speak it. The silent change of 2026 is learning to see the body as a warning system of the unconscious. Every contraction, heaviness, or fatigue is a message. This direction is not for you. Every sensation of expansion, lightness, or warmth is a whisper. Go on. This isn't spirituality or imagination. It is what Jung called somatic intelligence, the primal wisdom beneath thought, something modern people have lost because they live too much in their heads and too little within themselves. One viewer of the channel once shared that every morning, just seeing her boss's name on her phone made her stomach tighten. She assumed it was work pressure, but her body kept sending stronger signals: chronic insomnia, neck and shoulder pain, slight shortness of breath whenever she entered the office. Her mind repeatedly rationalized every job is stressful. But after she fainted during a meeting, she finally sat with a therapist and realized her body had been screaming for a long time that the environment was harming her. And when she changed jobs, within 3 weeks, all symptoms disappeared without medication. What changed was not her health, it was her soul finally being put back into the right rhythm. Imagine your body as a compass needle. Just one incompatible energy field will make the needle tremble and turn. The mind may explain it away, but a compass has only one job: point to the truth. Your body is no different. It always knows where you belong and where you need to leave. So in 2026, the most silent change you can make is learning not to betray your body anymore. Each time your body contracts, pause. Each time it expands, trust that feeling, because the body is the gatekeeper between consciousness and the unconscious. It senses the truth long before you dare to name it. And when you begin listening to your body, something miraculous happens. Intuition strengthens, thoughts become clearer, emotions become more balanced. You no longer need to guess which path is right. Your body will guide you silently yet precisely. Number 6. Facing a primal fear you have always avoided. If you listen more deeply, you will realize that life begins to lead you toward a subtler barrier after you have withdrawn your energy from meaningless distractions, a fear you have avoided for many years. Jung once said that every step of real growth requires you to pass through the doorway of fear. And the interesting thing is that fear is never outside. It lies in the unconscious, where the shadow waits for you to see it. In Jungian psychology, primal fear always goes hand in hand with the shadow, the dark part containing instincts, needs, and suppressed power. That primal fear may be the fear of abandonment, the fear of failure, the fear of being seen for who you truly are, the fear of not being enough, the fear of losing control. Every year, each person has a central fear that operates their decisions and behaviors. In the old year, you avoided it, but in 2026, you step into it. This is the most powerful silent change in the entire Jungian transformation journey, daring to look directly at what makes you tremble instead of finding ways to go around it. In anyone's journey, primal fear is like a closed door inside the unconscious house. You stand outside imagining that something terrifying lies behind it. But the truth is, the only thing that makes it frightening is the fact that you haven't opened it yet. When you touch the doorknob, your heart races. When you crack it open, your breath shortens. But when the door opens fully, what you find is not a monster, but the part of yourself you abandoned. Fear does not disappear because you avoid it. It dissolves only when you look straight at it. Brené Brown, the leading researcher on vulnerability, once admitted that the biggest fear of her life became the very thing she devoted her career to studying. Brené went through what she called a spiritual breakdown. She feared being seen for her true nature, imperfect, uncertain, not as strong or competent as the image the world imposed on her. To avoid that fear, she concealed her emotions with control, building for herself an intricate armor of intellect and achievement. And then, in her defining TED Talk, for the first time, Brené publicly admitted her imperfections, her confusion, and her fear. What she feared most ultimately became a turning point. The talk went viral and reached tens of millions of people, opening an entirely new chapter in her career. Brené did not overcome her fear through strength or control. She overcame it by stepping directly into the place her shadow always wanted to hide. When you avoid a fear, you are avoiding a part of your own power. That is why in the coming year, the silent shift you need is not to conquer the fear, but to walk into it. Write down, what am I avoiding, and go straight into it, slowly but truthfully. Because as Jung once reminded, to confront a person with his shadow is to show him his own light. When you dare to face your deepest fear, you simultaneously touch the strongest light within yourself. And perhaps this is true transformation, not becoming fearless, but no longer running away from fear. So, we have now traveled more than half the journey, and I am truly grateful that you have stayed with me until here. Before moving forward, take a slow breath to feel what is shifting within you as the new year approaches, the old fears dissolving, and a new space opening for you to step into. If you feel that 2026 is the moment when you no longer want to hide, if you are ready to face the primal fear that has silently guided you for so long, leave one word in the comments: ready. Because sometimes just one small word is enough to mark the moment you decide to step into a new chapter of your life, lighter, truer, and closer to your real self. Number 7, refining your relationship with loneliness, turning it into a sacred space. In the journey of transformation for the new year, there is an inner territory you cannot skip. The place where you are forced to meet the person you have avoided for so long, yourself in moments of loneliness. Carl Jung once said that loneliness does not come from the absence of people around you, but from the inability to reveal your true self to others. If 2025 made you face noise, then 2026 is the year you learn to walk into silence. Not the kind of silence that leaves you empty, but one that becomes a sacred space where the self can speak. In one therapy session, I heard the story of a young entrepreneur who always felt lost whenever she was alone. She filled her schedule from morning to night with meetings, coffees, and events, not because she enjoyed them, but because the moment she returned to an empty room, she immediately felt uneasy. When asked to spend 20 minutes each day sitting in silence without devices, she described the first week as so uncomfortable I wanted to stand up immediately. But by the third week, she began to recognize the truth she had avoided for so long. She was not satisfied with her current career, and that feeling only appeared when no one else was distracting her. In those silent moments, she made the most important decision of the year: to shift her career, not because loneliness hurt her, but because it made her see what noise had been hiding. You see, most of us fear loneliness not because loneliness hurts, but because loneliness forces us to face what we have postponed for too long. That is why the silent change you need is not to escape loneliness, but to refine your relationship with it. When you stop treating loneliness as an enemy and begin to see it as a ritual of returning inward, clarity appears in ways few people ever experience. Jung once wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." Loneliness is not the emptiness of the outside world, but an invitation to return to the inner world, where the truest parts of you are waiting to be heard. In 2026, loneliness is no longer a place you fall into, but a place you return to. Every moment no one is watching you is a moment you can see yourself more deeply. And when you are brave enough to stay in that space, not resisting, not running, not filling it with fake dopamine, you will hear the subtlest sound of growth: clarity. Loneliness becomes the mirror you cannot find in a noisy society, the mirror that shows you what has become tired, what is still alive, and what you are ready to plant for the future. Because loneliness, when used correctly, is not emptiness. It is a ritual of returning to the self. And from that stillness, you will know what the next step is for you. Stop fighting reality, ending inner resistance. But after you have learned to face loneliness as a sacred space, a natural question appears. What happens when reality itself is the thing you most want to resist? This is the next threshold of 2026, not fighting to force everything to change according to your will, but ending the invisible battle you have been exhausted by for so long. Jung taught that much suffering does not come from circumstances, but from resisting those circumstances. We are not drained by the truth, but by the silent war against the truth. And 2026 in Jung's spirit is the year not of winning or losing, but the year of releasing resistance, the moment when the inner and outer currents finally merge into one. Imagine standing in a strong river. The more you resist the water, the more your body tightens, your breath shortens, your arms lose strength. But if you simply turn your body in the direction of the current, the water lifts you instead of dragging you down.
Life operates the same way. What you strain to resist is often exactly what is inviting you to move in a new direction. In neuroscience, there's a concept called emotional resistance reflex. Whenever you encounter an undesirable event, the sympathetic nervous system immediately activates, pushing the body into fight or flight. This increases heart rate, tightens muscles, and temporarily suppresses the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making and clarity. In other words, resistance does not make you stronger. It makes you less clear. When you release, the parasympathetic system activates, restoring balance and giving you deeper insight, not through effort, but through acceptance. Therefore, release is not giving up.
Release is ending the pointless fight against what cannot be changed in this moment. Release is letting your energy flow freely for transformation instead of being stuck in tension. Release is stopping the question, why me, and beginning to ask, what is this inviting me to become? Jung once wrote, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. What you resist does not merely stay, it grows stronger." Conversely, what you accept, not acceptance as passivity, but acceptance as allowing, softens, opens, and guides you into a clearer way of living. 2026 will shift the moment you stop holding your hand in a fist. When you release, the current can carry you to where you belong. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is to stop resisting. Only when you stop pushing against life do you realize that the path ahead was never as dark as you imagined. Clarity does not come from controlling what happens, but from no longer being drowned by inner resistance. And when you are calm enough to allow reality to be as it is, you will recognize life never needed you to fight it. It only needed your cooperation to lead you into a larger version of yourself. And you? Is there something in your life you are resisting more than you dare admit? Share one small sentence in the comments. Perhaps naming it is the moment that resistance begins to dissolve. Listening to synchronicity as the self's navigation map. Number 9. Listening to synchronicity as the self's navigation map. And when you begin releasing inner resistance, another subtle door opens, where life starts whispering to you in ways the rational mind can never explain. If the previous part taught you to stop fighting the current, this part teaches you to recognize that the current always has its own language, synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that Jung called the objective language of the unconscious. Carl Jung once wrote, "Synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see." This means synchronicity is always present, but only those who observe with inner depth can perceive it. In 2026, you do not need to search for answers in faraway places. You only need to learn to see the small signs guiding you back to the right direction of the self. Synchronicity appears in many forms. A sentence you overhear that answers exactly the question you have been struggling with. A book that falls into your hands on the very day you need it. An opportunity that appears right after you let go of something outdated. Or a stranger you accidentally meet who holds the key to a new chapter of your life. Most people consider these coincidences, but not Jung. He believed synchronicity is how your inner unconscious communicates with the outer world. And when the two streams unite, that is the guidance of individuation. I once knew a woman named Hannah who for years wondered whether she should leave a relationship she felt no longer aligned with. Reason told her to try harder, but whenever she imagined the future, her body contracted, a feeling so real she could not ignore it. One day, while cleaning her room, Hannah happened to open an old journal and saw a line she once wrote, "Do not shrink yourself for anyone." That sentence made her stop, as if the past was reminding her of something she had forgotten. The next day, while waiting for the bus, an elderly stranger casually spoke a few sentences and then said softly, "You will not be happy in a place where your soul cannot breathe." Hannah didn't know the woman, and the sentence had nothing to do with their conversation, but it touched exactly what she had been struggling with. These events did not make the decision for her. They simply illuminated what she already knew inside but had hesitated to face. And that is synchronicity in Jung's sense, coincidences appearing at the right moment to illuminate your inner direction, helping you see the truth you have sensed for a very long time. In the new year, synchronicity becomes the most subtle map guiding you back to the self. Not through logic, but through the new sensitivity you have cultivated through the silent work. Less control, less fear, less noise, less energy leakage. And when your mind becomes quiet, synchronicity appears more often.
Not because it suddenly increases, but because you finally have the eyes to see. Remember this, synchronicity is not magic. Synchronicity is dialogue between you and life, And those who are awake enough to listen will always know where they are being guided. Restoring inner honesty after a year of living away from your essence. Number 10. Restoring inner honesty after a year of living away from your essence. And after you have passed through the fear of others' perceptions, you will realize something much more subtle. All this time, you were not only afraid of being judged by others, you were afraid of yourself. That is why Jung considered inner honesty to be one of the most powerful shifts in personal development. After a 2025 in which you may have said yes when you wanted to say no, appeared strong when you were hurting, or continued things that contradicted your essence because you didn't want to disappoint anyone, 2026 is the year you restore honesty with your soul. Honesty that is quiet, without declarations, yet capable of reorienting your entire inner life. Inner honesty is not merely admitting mistakes. It is daring to see your true needs, true limits, true emotions, and true desires without sugarcoating, without rationalizing, without reshaping them to fit a role. Many people believe they are exhausted because life is heavy, but in truth, they are exhausted from performing a version of themselves they think the world wants to see. Like wearing an oversized cloak, it looks good, but you cannot breathe. I once worked with a woman who was always described by her friends as calm, mature, balanced, but in a private conversation, Alina admitted she couldn't remember the last time she expressed her real feelings. When she was sad, she smiled to keep the peace. When she was tired, she still agreed to help others. One day, after saying yes to a project she didn't want, Alina went home and cried simply because she no longer had the strength to keep pretending. She said, "I realized I wasn't living my own life. I was living the life I thought others expected of me." That moment didn't create immediate large changes, but it opened the first honesty she had allowed herself, admitting she wasn't okay. And from that small marker, Alina began saying no when necessary, resting when tired, and choosing what truly made her feel at peace. She didn't become someone else, she just stopped betraying herself. The clearest image for inner honesty is cleaning a dusty mirror. The dust isn't the mirror's fault, but it makes the reflection distorted. When you wipe each layer, old expectations, old roles, old promises, old habits of pleasing others, your true image becomes clearer. You don't need to try to become someone else, you just need to remove what isn't you. Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But when you dare to face yourself, including the weak parts, the strange desires, the needs you once denied, you enter a way of living where nothing can mislead you anymore, because nothing is clearer than the truth whispered by your soul. Inner honesty is the final silent change, yet it is the foundation for the entire transformation journey. Because once you live truthfully with yourself, everything that is not aligned will naturally fall away. Every burden will become lighter, and the direction you have been searching for will appear within the truth you finally accept. When you look back at these 10 silent changes, you will see they are not loud revolutions, but tiny adjustments in your inner structure, small enough that others may not notice, but powerful enough to shift the entire direction of your life. The transformation of a year never comes from New Year's declarations or dazzling goals. It comes from the moments you dare to look at what you avoided, dare to release what held you, dare to listen to the self, and walk according to your inner truth. And if there is one thing you carry from this journey, let it be this awareness. You do not need to be perfect to begin a new chapter. You only need enough honesty to see where you are standing, enough courage to leave what has become too tight, and enough stillness to hear which door life is opening next. Because the truest change is not becoming someone else, but returning to the person you were always meant to be. If this video made you feel lighter, clearer, or reminded you of something you have known for a long time, share it with someone stepping into the new year with many questions. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the upcoming journeys. 2026 has already begun to move, and you deserve to step into it with a version of yourself that is wider, deeper, and truer than ever.